Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I have been on a spurt of reading and reviewing books by Singaporean authors, so today will be no different. Although it is a little bit different, this is a spicy one, and I had no idea it was going to be spicy when I picked up this book. So, I just finished Death of a Perm Sec by Wong Souk, and I feel like from this cover, when you see this in the library, you think this is going to be like a thriller, maybe like Crazy Rich Asians style, like something very light airport thriller. Okay, so it's definitely a mystery, and I guess you can categorize it as a thriller as well. But the crazy thing about this book is that I found out once I literally started reading it is that it's written by Wong Souk is a member of the opposition in Singapore. And so if you read her bio, and she was detained during Operation Spectrum. So it goes, Wong Souk is a playwright and former political detainee. In 1987, she was detained for allegedly taking part in a Marxist conspiracy against the government. In 1982, she co-founded the now defunct theater group Third Stage. She co-directed and co-wrote the play Square Moon, staged in 2013 about detention without trial. She has a PhD in creative writing. She's currently an adjunct lecturer at the National University of Singapore, and she's chairman of the Singapore Democratic Party. So the SDP is the party of Chee Soon-juan, which, if you would remember, several years ago, I reviewed a fantastic book about the opposition in Singapore, which I will link below. And it covered Chee Soon-juan a lot, and he has been targeted by the ruling party for ages, but he's still around, and he still sells his books and stuff near McDonald's at various MRT stations. But I had no idea about others. Well, so actually, I also reviewed a book a few years ago called The Naysayers Book Club, and I feel like in that book, there was a essay by a political detainee. Yeah, okay, so this is Naysayer. Wow, look how intense I was with all my sticky notes. Anyway, I did review this, and Teo So Lung, yeah, that's who it is. She was a detainee. Also, wow, I took so many notes. Look at me. This is how I know stuff, but I don't know if I remember the stuff that I read. Anyway, so 107 is her chapter. The whole premise of this book is asking these folks, like these members of Singapore civil society, about books and like what books they like to read, but also learning about their lives a little bit. It's really good. I definitely recommend it. I also reviewed this. So anyway, yeah, see, there's like a list of their favorite books. But I read this about, yeah, she was also arrested during Operation Spectrum. Okay, so I was vaguely familiar. Like, I've read this, I've read her story. Obviously, I know about Operation Spectrum because I've read so much Singaporean history, and I also read that book. I mean, I've read a lot about it. But I've never read a fiction murder mystery, like political thriller, written by the chairman of a Singapore opposition party. Oh, it just blows my mind. Like, this is in every single library pretty much that I've been to in Singapore, because I've been trying to visit every library in Singapore. And this book is on the shelves. So I don't know what that says. I'm not going to say anything about it. But all of the advanced praise is definitely from opposition or opposition adjacent people. Oh, so basically in the late 80s, Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew detained a lot of members of Singapore civil society under the grounds that they were part of this Marxist conspiracy, like including lawyers, including priests or a priest from the Catholic Church. So like members of civil society were rounded up and detained without trial. Apparently, Wong Souk was also detained. And so what I have to say about this book is it is not good. It is really not a good book. But I had to finish it just because of who wrote it, what it's about, and just, I mean, it's interesting in itself just as an aspect of like the opposition landscape in Singapore. And who knew? I had literally no idea. Like, I've been reading so many novels that are Singlit, and I had no idea that there was this. So let me tell you what it's about, because what it's about is even crazier. So basically, it follows the downfall of a minister or a permanent secretary for the Ministry of Housing. This is all in like an imagined, like a parallel Singapore in the 80s. And he commits suicide, and his whole family, he has 4 kids. They're trying to piece together what has happened. They don't think he would have committed suicide. And it's also, they're facing a lot of shame because he was under corruption investigation for awarding contracts for public housing and skimming off the top. But there are so many thinly veiled characters in this novel. So there is a character who is obviously Lee Kuan Yew, but not called Lee Kuan Yew. He's called Edwin Wee, and he's just like definitely LKY. Then there is someone who is definitely Lim Chin Seong. So Lim Chin Seong comes from like a Chinese educated background, and basically he and LKY came together to like form this front against British colonial rule. If you want to know more, you can watch my other video about the art of Charlie Chan Hock Chye. That is my favorite Singaporean work that describes like the alternative narrative to how the political action party came into power. But anyway, there's definitely like a clear person who's supposed to be Lim Chin Seong. There is like an opposition member of parliament. Anyway, it's just so thinly veiled, and exactly what happens in this book is the alternative narrative of how LKY came to power and how he like, suppressed some voices, made deals with others. It even talks about merger. So this book is clearly her opinion of what really went down, which there's definitely truth to it. It's history. There's not just like one side. But also with this added layer of the kids trying to figure out if the dad actually committed suicide out of shame or was he murdered. And the interesting thing, I think, about this book, even though it's not good at all, is she does depict like these different agencies, like the Internal Security Department, ISD, the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau is in this. And one of the commenters, it was either a Goodreads commenter or somebody in this book who did the advanced praise, said this is like the only depiction we have of what it's like to be interrogated in detention, because she actually went through it, and there's some scenes in here. They're kind of not that vivid, actually, which might just be a feature of like the poor writing style, but the fact that she is depicting what it's like to be detained without trial and interrogated is just fascinating, because it's obviously like informed by her own experience. So this is like one of the only records we have, but because it's fiction, I don't know, it just blows my mind that this is like on the shelf in every public library. Like I picked this up because I thought it would be like an airport thriller. I see it all the time in the library. Yeah, so I'm just beating a dead horse, but it just blows my mind that this is like actually a very thinly veiled account of like how LKY came to power and why it was not what we're taught in school, what Singaporeans are taught in school. I didn't grow up in Singapore. So anyway, the plot is like pretty thin and predictable. The writing is very, very mediocre, and the dialogue especially is like pretty atrocious. So it was almost hard to finish, but I kept going because it was just so fascinating. Like the premise is so fascinating that this opposition chairman of the SDP, who was also detained during Operation Spectrum, wrote a book about it, and like has like a thinly veiled Lee Kuan Yew character, a thinly veiled opposition member. I don't know if the opposition member is based off someone. The 4 kids, you follow each of their lives. There's like the oldest son, the oldest daughter, then the 2 younger ones. They all have their own issues. They're all like worried about different things. One of them's kind of like a loser who wasted his dad's money being educated overseas, but then never really made much of himself. The other is a lawyer, but once all of their assets are frozen, he becomes a hawker, like a noodle stall owner. The younger daughter is the one who like has the diary that her father took from the Lee Kuan Yew character, detailing all of the like sordid details of what went down. So she's the one who like got sent away so that no one would find out. And then the older daughter is married to the son of the finance minister, so she's trying to have like a proper life. So like it's like an admirable effort. It's just like not very well written, and it's like not a good book, but I do think it's fascinating if you're like a Singapore nerd, which I am. This is why I'm like so activated about this, and I have no one to talk to about this. I just like can't believe this exists and is like in every library in Singapore. Okay, I'll stop saying that. Yeah, and the ending is pretty bleak. Like the younger sister who's trying to hold a press conference about this diary of the LKY supposed LKY character that shines a light on all the messed up things he did to get to independence, she just is detained without trial, and that's how it ends. And the one or two foreign papers that reported on it their stories are spiked, and like no one's allowed to talk about it. So it's kind of bleak. But if anyone is doing a review of like the opposition in Singapore, or especially, I think it'd be really cool to think about counter traditional political and social opinions through art, because I do feel like the theater scene in Singapore is a lot more active than you might assume if you're a Western observer. And a lot of the stuff I see in plays, I'm like shocked that it gets approved by IMDA to be put on. Not all of it does, but apparently we also have it in book format. Who knew? I mean, it's not a good book, but it does exist, and it just blows my mind. So if you see this in the library, this is not some light little murder mystery. This is like written by a former detainee who is then trying to like draw out certain points about what she believes to have gone down in the founding of Singapore's modern political setup. So can I say I recommend this? Not really. It was very hard to slog through, but just for its value as a piece of like almost opposition art, I mean, you can check it out. I will give it a 2 out of 5. Yeah, she's clearly like not the best writer, but she still has extremely valuable and interesting life experience that she's channeled into this novel. So check it out if you think that would be your thing. So that's what I thought about Death of a Perm Sec. Really fascinating. That's why I'm loving going to all these libraries in Singapore and picking up stuff off the shelf, because I just pick things based on the cover and how thick it is, and then it ends up being, you know, a thinly veiled account of Singapore's modern independence journey written by a former detainee who is now the chairman of the Singapore Democratic Party, which is like not a very viable opposition party in Singapore. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.